In 1720, the morning air in London felt strange. It was cold, yet filled with hope. The sound of horses echoed across cobblestone streets, and inside the city's coffee houses, something new had been born: greed. People talked less about food and more about numbers, shares, dividends, guaranteed profits. Everyone believed they were about to become rich, or at least that's what they told themselves. Britain was an empire that ruled the seas, but in 1720, its greatest enemy was not abroad, it was within. This is the story of the South Sea Bubble, the story of a nation that mistook the future for a lottery, and when reality finally knocked on the door, blood hit the ground. At the beginning of the 18th century, Britain was emerging from constant warfare, long and expensive conflicts with Spain, global rivalry with France, the enormous cost of the Royal Navy, soldiers' pensions. The empire had won its wars, but the treasury was dying. National debt had exploded. The government had borrowed heavily from bankers, merchants, and ordinary citizens. But there was one problem. The Crown had no clear plan to pay it back. Interest payments grew every year. Taxes were already pushed to their limits. Political pressure intensified. Britain needed a solution that could make the debt disappear, keep the public happy, and prevent the entire system from collapsing. That's when a dangerous idea was born. In 1711, a new company was registered, the South Sea Company. The name itself sounded like a dream. South Sea meant South America. Gold, silver, sugar, slaves, endless trade. The company made an offer to the government that sounded like paradise. Hand over the national debt to us. We will give investors shares, and through trade with South America, we will generate so much wealth that the debt will vanish. The government believed that if it worked, they would be heroes, but the reality was brutal. Britain had no real control over Spanish South America. The trade rights existed mostly on paper, but markets don't fall in love with reality, they fall in love with stories. The South Sea Company transformed debt into dreams. Its model was dangerous, but its marketing was brilliant. People holding government bonds, boring assets with low interest and uncertain futures, were told to convert them into South Sea shares. Stop being a lender, become an owner of the empire. Debt became equity, risk became fantasy, reality turned into hope, and people believed. Members of Parliament became shareholders, ministers, judges, royal insiders. The system was already rotten on the inside, but glamorous on the outside. By 1720, London had changed. Coffee houses became churches, and brokers replaced priests. Inside Jonathan's coffee house, shopkeepers sold their businesses, widows invested their savings, and soldiers gambled their pensions. Everyone repeated the same sentence: South Sea can never fall. The share price soared from £100 to £300 to £500 to £1,000. London witnessed its first paper millionaires. A new word was born: speculator, and a new obsession took over: quick wealth. The rise of South Sea unleashed another monster: copycat companies. New schemes appeared every day. Companies promising profits from walnut trees, silver extraction, divorce insurance, and the most infamous of all, a company for carrying out an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. And still, people invested, because investors don't want products, they want rising price charts. While the public was buying, the smart money was selling. Company directors, politicians, royal insiders. They quietly dumped their shares, withdrew cash, bought gold, bought land, and told the public to hold. Every bubble follows the same rule. At the top, insiders are already gone. Then came the first crack. In mid-1720, news spread that Spain officially denied Britain any special trade rights in South America. At first, people laughed. Then they thought. Then they calculated. If there is no trade, where will the profits come from? Selling began. Prices slipped. Panic followed. And panic is poison in financial markets. The collapse was sudden and brutal. Yesterday's millionaires became desperate sellers. Buyers vanished. Prices crashed from £1,000 to £800 to £500 to £200. Margin calls destroyed borrowers. Loans defaulted. Lives collapsed. One banker wrote, "London aged overnight." Suicides followed. Families were ruined. Trust evaporated. South Sea shares became worthless paper. By the end of 1720, London fell silent. Coffee houses closed. Anger rose against Parliament. One question echoed through the streets: who is responsible? And the answer was about to explode. Because this was not just a financial crash, it was a political earthquake. Parliament came under fire. The public discovered that MPs owned shares, ministers used insider information, and laws were rewritten to protect the company. This was not a market failure, it was a state-sponsored fraud. Crowds gathered outside Parliament, pamphlets circulated, cartoons portrayed MPs as pigs, directors as thieves, and investors as fools. The message was clear: if we drowned, you drown too. But there was a problem. Too many powerful people were involved. Punish everyone, and the government would fall. The monarchy would weaken. The empire itself would collapse. So the Parliament chose a familiar strategy: sacrifice a few to save the rest. In 1721, an official investigation began. Directors were summoned. Accounts were frozen. Letters were seized. And then the most dangerous discovery emerged: secret profit lists. Detailed records showing which MPs profited, who sold early, and which laws were exchanged for stock. It was corruption laid bare. The trials became public spectacles. Newspapers reported daily. Crowds gathered outside courtrooms. Directors cried, fainted, and blamed each other. One claimed he only followed orders. Another said it was Parliament's idea. The truth was simple: everyone was complicit. Some powerful figures fell. A finance minister was imprisoned and lost his estate. An MP was expelled and fled the city. The treasurer committed suicide. People said the bubble didn't just destroy money, it destroyed people. But not everyone paid. Many powerful figures escaped unscathed. Their wealth was already converted into land, gold, and protected assets. The investigation reached the slow, the naive, and the unprotected. Once again, the system shielded the rich. The greatest losses were suffered by widows, retired soldiers, and small shopkeepers. They had no lawyers, no connections, no second chances. Many ended up in workhouses, begging or fleeing the city. Britain learned a bitter truth: the stock market is a game for the rich, and the poor always pay the price. As chaos peaked, one institution acted quietly: the Bank of England. It didn't panic, it didn't promise miracles, it stabilized liquidity, issued emergency loans, and prevented total collapse. At the time, the public barely noticed. History later would. After 1721, Britain imposed strict rules: controls on joint stock companies, limits on share issuance, severe penalties for fraud. An entire generation lost faith in markets. Parents warned their children, shares are traps for the wealthy. The South Sea bubble didn't just wound the economy, it scarred Britain's soul. People learned that paper wealth is dangerous, easy money is usually a lie, and crowds are often wrong. But Britain did something rare: it learned. Unlike France,
Britain did not abandon finance. It strengthened its central bank, learned to manage debt, regulated markets, and built the foundation for industrial dominance. The bubble was a warning, not a death sentence. By 1721, the bubble was dead, trials ended, stability returned, but one question remained. What does this story really mean? The answer was simple. Markets are not driven by numbers. They are driven by human emotion, greed, fear, herd mentality, and hope without evidence. South Sea investors were not stupid. They were educated and intelligent. They just believed one dangerous sentence: this time is different. And history has repeated that sentence ever since. The pattern was born. A new idea appears.
History teaches us that bubbles burst, but greed never does. I'm John, and this was Cinematic History, Lionsburg. If you want to understand how the past writes the future, subscribe, because when the next bubble forms, you should be among those who already knew.